All right, welcome to the Young Turks. It's a whole new week. Well, not a whole week, really, because it's Thanksgiving week. But all right, take it easy. I'll be doing videos throughout the week.
Of course you will.
But the first half that we're going to cover for you guys live is gangbusters, including today. So I know we got a lot of different platforms and outlets that cover us now, and I love our new friends on television in the 4 markets on the East Coast. And you can now get us on Roku, so all these wonderful places to check us out. But for the folks who watch live 6 to 8 p.m., today's gonna be 6 to 9 p.m. online. So you can get that on tyt.com/live when we're on live. And you could also go to easy ways, youtube.com/tyt as well. They're both equally great, okay? Anyway, I tell you that today because after the show, we normally have Rebel Headquarters, that's also live. If you're watching again on YouTube, Facebook, and tyt.com. And today, for the first time since he's a presidential candidate, Richard Ojeda will come on. And the conversation will be about, is he sufficiently progressive? Ooh,
I like this conversation.
That interesting, okay? So there's another great guest on Rebel Headquarters. And then normally we go to postgame just for members, but today, everybody will be able to watch the post game. So if you've never watched it, it's a good moment to do that. We hope you stick around and watch that as well. And but only members can ask questions, and they'll be able to ask those questions through video, which will be pretty neat. So tyt.com/join, obviously, to become a member, or /jank to become a member. And that way you can ask us questions live today as well. And then tomorrow, a bonanza, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern as always, regular show. And then 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern, tyt.com/live. We got an amazing 3-hour show for you guys. We're gonna launch a new program that I think is electrifying. Okay, it's a big surprise. I think you're gonna love that surprise. I think it's super interesting. That's for tomorrow. Okay, now we got a ton of things to beat up Donald Trump on. So let's get started.
All right, we're actually gonna start off with going after establishment Democrats. So let's do that, and then the rest of the show does touch on Trump quite a bit. Touch on Trump is a weird phrase. Okay.
Yeah,
unfortunate. Okay, moving on. Morning Joe hosted a panel today in defense of Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House. Now, there is an ongoing movement within the Democratic Party to replace Nancy Pelosi with someone more progressive, someone who's more of a fighter, someone who is unwilling to immediately concede to bipartisanship as soon as Democrats win the House. And during this interview, during this panel, someone brought up the Young Turks, but were they referring to us? Take a look.
It's become clear that Pelosi can take a punch, and if you need, if you're going to have somebody go into a boxing ring with the likes of Donald Trump, Pelosi has made it clear that she can take a few swings. In the meantime, no Democratic challenger has stepped forward to run against Pelosi, begging the question: do they have what it takes?
Hi, Steve Ratner in New York. So as it happens, I've seen her a couple times since the election at various events and things, and I think the effort that she is putting in, her energy, her strength, her willingness to talk to every member and try to corral all these people is really quite extraordinary, especially for someone who's 78 years old. It's been amazingly impressive to me to watch her. That said, as you know, there's this group of, I'll call them the Young Turks for lack of a better word. I think there's about 20 of them who've committed to vote against her. I think Seth Moulton is one of the leaders, Tim Ryan. And as you say, they don't have a candidate. But the question is, how does this all play out? She does really have to get virtually all of her caucus. She can only afford to lose a small number to get through this process. How do you see this finally playing out?
Yeah, Steve, I think right now she can only afford to lose about 14 votes or something, and it is said that, as you say, there are around 18 or so dissidents, the young and the restless, or however you want to term them.
So it appears that they were not referring to us at the Young Turks, meaning this new show, but Young Turks meaning rebels within the Democratic Party who want to challenge Pelosi.
Yeah, so there's lots of twists and turns here. Robert Draper might have known about us. That's why he's like, well, I don't know if I'd call them Young Turks, because those guys that Steve Ratner was referring to, Tim Ryan, although maybe the most common TYT guest we've ever had throughout our history, meaning he was probably the one congressman who came on the most. But unfortunately, he has taken a centrist turn. Seth Moulton, centrist. And by centrist, of course, we mean corporate and establishment. And so it's an absolute shame. Tim Ryan came in, a young, aggressive, excellent congressman, but now thinks going more towards the Republicans is the better idea. So those are not us. So the Young Turks that Ratner was referring to are younger members of Congress who are actually more corporate friendly. Whoa. That might have been why Draper was like, well, I don't know about calling the Young Turks. So, now there are 3 different camps here to get to the substance of this story, and that's part of the conversation as to what's going to happen with Pelosi. The other part of the conversation is the media conversation and why we brought this tape up in particular. We've always told you guys, Morning Joe is the epicenter of establishment thinking. And so the establishment loves people like Hillary Clinton, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, Nancy Pelosi. So when Nancy Pelosi is mentioned, everyone on air has an unbelievable agreement fest. Oh, Pelosi, quite extraordinary, I do declare. And she can take a punch and she's tough as she fights. They never, ever, ever give specifics.
Never. Except
sometimes they'll mention the only accomplishment she has, which is that with a supermajority, she was able to pass Romney Care, which is, by the way, yes, it is Obamacare, but it is the same thing as Romney Care. It was borrowed from Mitt Romney in the first place. Congratulations to Barack Obama on that. But by the way, congratulations to Mitt Romney, because that is better than what we had, okay? But it's nowhere near progressive priorities. And so they're like, huh, can you believe she somehow marshaled an overwhelming majority to vote for the predominant priority of the current president, who had a supermajority in the Senate as well, had every branch of government, and barely got Romney Care through with none of the progressive priorities like public option, let alone Medicare for all. Well, I didn't know she was that good. But everybody on TV, right. This is why the older generation, look, there's plenty of older folks who watch us too, and now it's a lot more dispersed because everybody's going online.
Right.
But the older generation that largely grew up on TV and still believes in things like Morning Joe, they have no idea that Nancy Pelosi is actually a corporate person. They think she's a tough fighter and has gotten a lot of things accomplished. Why? Why do they think that? Because everyone on TV tells them, Nancy Pelosi, unbelievable what she's gotten accomplished. What is it? Name it, God damn it, name it. Nothing.
Well, they also happen to be the same people who have gotten very comfortable with how politics works these days, which is the person who raises the most money, the person who's effective in fundraising, is the most powerful, influential person in Congress. But that's just not what progressives want. And so whenever people cite the fact that she raised all this money for the Democratic Party, that argument doesn't resonate with real progressives. And I don't even want to just exclude older individuals who identify as progressives, because they're sick of a corrupt political system as well.
Hell yeah.
So don't mention the fact that she raised a ton of money as a reason for why all Democrats should support her. That is it's the heart of what progressives want to change, money in politics. So that does not resonate with people. They don't actually want someone just because they can raise money.
Okay, so now finally the substance of, is she going to be Speaker of the House? Who's in which camps? As I alluded to earlier, there are 3 camps. So the overwhelming majority are in the normal establishment Democrat camp. And so those are the guys you're used to, Steny Hoyer, Nancy Pelosi, Clyburn, just down the middle of corporate Democratic America. So a smaller group is the one that Ratner was referring to, the Moulton and the Ryans, et cetera, that are even more corporate friendly. And they're like, no, Nancy Pelosi's too liberal. I know, it's literally.
It's amazing.
It's a literal LOL moment. I mean, you can't help but laugh out loud. But on TV, this conversation would shake them to their core. On cable news, they'd be like, oh, somebody thinks Nancy Pelosi is not liberal enough?
You know why? Because we're the real Young Turks.
Go and tell that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they're coming at her from the right. And in Washington, since Washington is so incredibly conservative, they think that's the only real challenge to her. They're like, a progressive challenge? What do you mean a progressive challenge? Nancy Pelosi is the most liberal person on the planet, right? So, okay, is there a progressive group? Of course there is. Now, as I love that Laura Ingraham referred to the 4 just Democrats that won this election cycle, other than the incumbents, as the 4 horsewomen of the apocalypse. They are for Fox News. That's true in the right wing and the establishment. Anyway, those are all real progressives. There's 3 just Democrats already in the House, and they're a real group of progressives. But to be fair, like, for example, we think Barbara Lee should be the Speaker of the House, but Barbara Lee has not stepped up for that position, right? So we're in favor of her, despite the fact that she's not campaigning for that position. So that's a fair point that they made there.
I want to jump in regard to Barbara Lee and why it is that progressives are pushing for her. In case you haven't heard much about Barbara Lee. Barbara Lee was the only member of Congress who voted against the war in Iraq.
And Afghanistan.
And Afghanistan. She was one of the few members of Congress who supported protections for the LGBT community when it was not popular to support protections for the LGBT community. She is a real fighter. She's a real progressive, and she has the track record to prove it. So that's the reason why her name is floating around, even though she has not, named herself as a potential candidate.
So the 2 things that progressives look for is, how progressive are you? Barbara Lee, it's a super easy win for her in that category. And number 2 is, how much of a fighter are you? Well, if you were willing to be the lone vote against the Afghanistan war, there were a couple on Iraq, but the lone one on Afghanistan in the House, well, that shows real strength and a fighting ability. And when Obama and Hillary Clinton finally got around to recognizing same-sex marriage, it was a million years later, and the country had already flipped on it, and the overwhelming majorities were already in favor of it. That's no courage at all. Sorry, it just isn't. That's a fact. Any politician could be for something after 60% of the country agrees to it, although a lot of Democrats still aren't, even on progressive priorities. But Barbara Lee did it way earlier than that, when it was not the cool thing to do. So she has shown strength over and over again. And of course, the simple-minded conventional wisdom pundits on cable news go, oh, so you're against Pelosi because of her age and because of her gender. What? Who said that? Right? We just told you Barbara Lee, and you're like, oh, okay, so you're against her because of her gender. What on God's green earth are you talking about? Because they can only see things in really simpleton ways.
I think it actually goes beyond that, and maybe I'm being too paranoid. I don't know, but my take on the accusations of sexism and ageism is that it's an intimidation tactic for anyone
100%.
who's speaking out, because no one wants to be labeled those things. And so if you challenge Pelosi and you get called a sexist or an ageist, well, then you're less likely to be as vocal or outspoken about it. But don't allow them to intimidate you. We're the same people who supported Bernie Sanders, who again is not, the youngest guy in the Senate. So it has nothing to do with age. It has nothing to do with gender. It has everything to do with substance and the ability to fight.
Yeah, and last couple of things here. First of all, there's rumors out there now that the corporate establishment Democrat trolls and bots are back, and then they're supporting Nancy Pelosi online in a media campaign that if you criticize her for any policy reason, substantive reason, they go on Twitter and Facebook, et cetera, and go, ageist, sexist, right? So the paid bots are back. So that's part of what's happening here. It's a lot of not real people, okay? And it's not just the Russians who have them. The corporate Democrats definitely have them and brag about using them. They have in other contexts, and now the rumors are that they are in this context. Why does Steve Ratner like Nancy Pelosi so much? Well, he's an incredibly wealthy businessman who worked in the financial industry. He's a huge Democratic donor. Well, if you're a Democratic donor who wants to keep your tax cuts and all the goodies that the Republicans gave you, Nancy Pelosi's perfect for you. She's not going to challenge any status quo. She's not going to, upend your boat. So the Steve Ratners of the world are like, extraordinary, right? That's why they love Nancy Pelosi, and she will do whatever those funders want. So, you should know that about Ratner. And finally, so how do the votes work? Because they mentioned the votes. And look, there's first a Democratic caucus vote and then a general vote that includes the Republicans. Pelosi, if she wins the Democratic vote, could lose the Speaker of the House if some of the people voting against her in the caucus then turn and vote with the Republicans. But that's not going to happen for any progressive. So the fight is within the caucus for progressives. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, et cetera, I would be shocked out of my mind. There's no way in the world that they're going to turn around and go, oh yeah, then I'll vote with Kevin McCarthy of the Republicans. No way. If a bunch of, I'm trying to spare the adjectives here, but I got plenty coming. If a bunch of right-wing Democrats decide they want to make the Republicans the Speaker of the House, well, I guess that's on them, but there would be hell to pay. So that is not the conversation. The conversation is what's happening inside the caucus. And do I think that the progressives are going to win this round? Well, look, Pelosi's got a tremendous amount of power within the House. So if Barbara Lee doesn't say she's going to challenge her, then she's going to win, yes. But it's important to at least set the standards for what's acceptable and not acceptable. And so once you lay out those markers and Nancy Pelosi does not advance any of the very progressive bills or decently progressive bills, well, then next time around, there will definitely be a challenger from the left and not from the right. Or if there is one from the right, it'll be irrelevant because the left will be far stronger.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we are going to jump right into Trump-related news, including his interview with Chris Wallace over the weekend.
All right, back at the Young Turks. Jen and Anna with you guys. You know, we've been doing this contest for the membership drive. I am thrilled to report that I am pulling away from John Irola. Up next, Anna Kasparian.
Oh.
Okay, you know what my secret weapon is? Did a bunch of videos on YouTube over the weekend plugging membership.
You're the worst.
Hey, listen, if you work harder, that's fine.
This guy.
No problem.
This guy.
I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of On the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be. Featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity, the UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
I mean,
Well,
who's
guys-
working on the weekends?
No. Wait. I'm working on the weekends. I'm writing no filter. Okay. This guy. So now I realize what this is all about. This is your roundabout way of getting me to do live videos over the weekend. I know it.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
We're just having a fun competition.
Mm-hmm.
All right, anyway, so that's to sign up for membership. I mean, for Christ's sake, it's $4.99. It's a cup of coffee. You get a progressive Netflix, all the shows you could handle. So obviously, tyt.com/Jen.
Anna, hey, it's so, look, some people will say, oh, well, you know, Netflix is $10 a month, but you guys don't get it. Like, you get a ton of shows, and I think it's worth it for old school alone.
Thank you.
Yeah,
for
it's
saying
really,
that.
really good. So.
And by the way, you can sign up for $10 too. There's more perks with $10, and it builds home with progressives. And in that category, close in on Casper even more. I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying. Okay, so be an activist if you can. Look, I'll talk more about it later, but you guys are some of the heroes that built the new progressive wing of the Democratic Party. So anyway, bless your hearts. Let me see the thermometer real quick. We're trying to get to 36,500 at the end of Friday. And so over the weekend we got there. So 36,529. Can I see 36,600? Okay. And I also need you to panic about Black Friday. Most Americans already are. This is day 6 of our 10 days of Black Friday at shoptyt.com. Today, the new offer is free poster if you buy something, a sweatshirt. What do I got here?
Free poster with sweatshirt or hoodie purchase.
Yeah, any hoodie or sweatshirt purchase gets you a free poster as well. 10 days of Black Friday, and this is day 6. ShopTYT.com, where you will also find the new Bernie One Kenobi shirt that you guys voted on.
Nice.
Okay, so thank you for designing it. Thank you for voting on it. And now you'll be able to buy it at ShopTYT.com. Okay, real quick couple comments here. Rebel Dragon says the fact that Trump seems to be pushing for Pelosi is reason enough to put someone else into the speaker position.
Totally.
Okay, people are like, oh, he's actually being nice to her. No. He wants her in that position because he thinks she's weak. I mean, come on, really? Really? He's being nice to her? Who would be naive enough to say that? What a ridiculous thing. Almost all the mainstream press, unfortunately, is framing it that way. Greg says, wow, the Young Turks has now become a verb in the 2019 English lexicon. Pretty impressive. Thank you, Greg, but honestly, it was a verb before us. We kind of named ourselves after the existing Young Turks definition, which is young rebels looking to overthrow an established system. I mean, how perfect is that for us? And finally, on Twitter, T. Joyce 1971 has a great point. If you've been at multiple events with Nancy Pelosi, as I believe Ratner said he was, since the election, you are part of the problem.
Exactly, yeah.
Perfect, that's a perfect comment. Thank you for writing in at #TYT Live. And Christina El Cherry, last one from Twitter, says, I'm a little worried about you guys being so quick to jump on the Ojeda for president bandwagon. He'd be great for Virginia, but the whole country voted for Trump. That scares me. West Virginia, and we're not jumping on any bandwagon. You get to judge for yourself, okay? Look, I did 2 other presidential candidate interviews already with people that don't have a huge name recognition. So I'm giving you all the choices like we did in 2016. We talked to Jill Stein a number of times. At the end of the day, I said I voted for Hillary Clinton, not for Jill Stein. So it's not for me to decide for you. You have to decide. So come check out Ojeda, see if you like him. Are there other people in the race that I like? Yes, okay. So, and is it a good thing that there are 3-4 people that we like in the race? Wonderful. Back in the day, if you had one person you liked in the race, you'd be like, oh my God, how are we this lucky?
Right.
Right?
Yeah, and I want to be clear just for myself, I'm not throwing my support behind anyone just yet. I want to see what the proposals are. I want the most progressive candidate to win, period. I love his fighting spirit, but that's different from what he's going to propose.
Well, come and see. So that's in a couple of hours. So make sure you stay right here to watch that. All right, what's next?
All right. Over the weekend, Fox News aired Chris Wallace's interview with Donald Trump. And of course, as you can expect, Trump said a number of crazy things, including additional criticisms toward the very admiral who oversaw the takedown of Osama bin Laden. Now let's hear what he had to say.
Bill McRaven, retired admiral, Navy SEAL, 37 years, former head of U.S. Special Operations.
Hillary Clinton fan.
Special Operations.
Excuse me, Hillary Clinton fan.
Who led the operations, commanded the operations that took down Saddam Hussein and that killed Osama bin Laden, says that your sentiment is the greatest threat to democracy in his lifetime.
He's a Hillary Clinton backer and an Obama backer. And frankly,
he was a Navy SEAL.
Wouldn't it have been nice if we got Osama bin Laden a lot sooner than that? Wouldn't it have been nice?
Amazing. So Trump has had, he's caught some feelings after Admiral McRaven had criticized him last year. And the context of this discussion has to do with the way Trump has treated the press, how he refers to them as the enemy of the people. And Admiral McRaven feels passionately about protecting freedom of the press and freedom of speech because he believes in our constitutional protections. Trump doesn't like that, and he actually doubled down on these statements today, saying, quote, "Of course we should have captured Osama bin Laden long before we did, essentially blaming Admiral McRaven for not capturing Osama bin Laden earlier.
Yeah, here's who you don't want to be on the wrong side of, Navy SEAL Team 6.
Yeah.
So now a lot of the guys who worked under McRaven and did the actual raid itself are coming, who are deeply conservative, by the way. Some of those guys, not all of them, are coming out going, yeah, no, Trump lost me on this one. Yeah, easy for you to say sitting in your nice couch at home how we should have caught bin Laden earlier, but you're welcome. Okay, so that's happening now, and that's a terrible political mistake for Donald Trump, who pretends to support the troops when in reality he never ever does. So now let's talk about the substance for a second. Well, no, I can't help but comment on the style first. Okay, Hillary Clinton fan. He's now become a self-parody where I feel like he's doing an imitation of Alec Baldwin doing Donald Trump, right? No, a big Hillary backer, a big Obama backer. Okay, what is this an intelligent conversation we're having about McRaven and the criticism he had of you in regards to the press? Or are you just a child? We know the answer.
Yeah.
So, but in case you're wondering, McRaven actually responded and said, I'm not a Hillary Clinton fan or any other politician. I've never claimed to be.
Yeah, let me give you his statement.
Yeah.
Because McRaven not only clarified what his political views are, he also doubled down on his critiques toward Trump. He said, I did not back Hillary Clinton or anyone else. I am a fan of President Obama and President George W. Bush, both of whom I worked for. I admire all presidents, regardless of their political party, who uphold the dignity of the office and who use that office to bring the nation together in challenging times. He also wrote, when you undermine the people's right to a free press and freedom of speech and expression, then you threaten the Constitution and all for which it stands. So again, his big issue with Trump is the way he's treated the media. And I think that that's an admirable position to take. No pun intended there, because he does actually believe in our Constitution. For all the talk that you hear from people on the right regarding we need to respect our troops in the military because they fight for our freedoms, I mean, Admiral McRaven actually believes it because he's actually been part of that fight. And to see someone like Trump essentially, go against or violate our First Amendment rights is insulting to him. And I like the fact that he's speaking out.
So it reminded me actually of one of the first Republicans ever to vote for the Wolfpack resolution. It was in Vermont, and she said that she lost her son in the Iraq war. And she said, he didn't go to fight for freedom over there so that we can give it away over here. And she said, no, I'm gonna vote to get money out of politics and so that the people control our democracy. It was a great, great speech, and it was from a Republican. So McRaven basically saying something very similar. We didn't go fight all those wars over there to give away our freedoms over here, which is exactly what Donald Trump wants you to do. Oh, the world's a scary place. There's caravans, there's infestation coming. You don't need the press. The press is the enemy of the people, right? And because they challenge me, so that's it. Let's just get rid of them and throw them out of the White House, et cetera. So now, I don't want people mistaking what we're saying. On the substance of the issue, there's a couple of different nuanced positions, so Donald Trump, you can leave now. One is, just because it's an admiral and one that caught bin Laden doesn't mean that I cede my opinions to him. There are many admirals I agree with, actually, and many that I don't agree with. That's perfectly normal, and that's the freedom that McRaven is trying to protect. And so, on the other hand, if Commander Bone Spurs is going to question McRaven on the job that he did, I mean, that's preposterous on two fronts. One front is, listen, man, the admiral doesn't decide when to go. That's up to the politicians. So if you say that we took too long to get bin Laden, I actually agree with that. But that wasn't McRaven's fault. That wasn't Navy SEAL Team 6's fault. That was George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, and Rumsfeld, who sat on it for 7 to 8 years, did nothing about it. In fact, literally, the New York Times reported that Rumsfeld had bin Laden cornered in Tora Bora. And an American general asked for permission to pursue, and Rumsfeld said no. That's a fact. Look that up. So if you want to blame anyone for how long it took to get bin Laden, the person most directly responsible is Don Rumsfeld, who was Secretary of Defense for George W. Bush. Once Obama took over, They actually did get him in relatively short order because he actually bothered to try. He told Admiral McRaven, hey, you know what? Why don't we try to get bin Laden? Okay, and it turns out when you try, it makes a big, big difference. And then secondly, it's galling that Trump, of all people, would criticize anybody because he's such a coward. He not only got 5 deferments out of Vietnam, including one fake one about bone spurs he doesn't have, but he wouldn't even go to honor veterans because it was raining outside.
And not only that, I mean, he refuses to visit combat zones when, past presidents have done it, and it's because he's a coward. Like, at the end of the day, it's incredibly insulting to have one of the most cowardly presidents go toward the guy who oversaw the takedown of Osama bin Laden and criticize him for anything. I mean,
yeah, I mean, he's saying, "Oh, nice job on getting me." He's not even saying that on getting bin Laden, but why'd you take so long? On what authority would Donald Bone Spurs Trump have to make that judgment call? I mean, and remember, of course, what he famously said about John McCain: "I prefer people who weren't captured." Well, it's easy to not get captured if you never go to Vietnam in the first place. So if you're not gonna go to combat zones, even though every other president has, you didn't go to Vietnam, at least have the decency to shut up about it and not criticize the guys who actually did go and actually got bin Laden.
This interview with Chris Wallace was on Fox News, obviously. And Fox News is the source that Trump supporters trust the most. And even with Trump's interview, where he specifically insults the very admiral who oversaw the takedown of Osama bin Laden, they still support him and they still argue that Trump is a patriotic president, that he cares for the troops, that the NFL players who decided to kneel in protest to raise awareness about police brutality, they're the traitors to the country, they're the ones who don't respect the troops. No, your very president, the person that you guys support, has on various occasions insulted various members of our military. And it just doesn't resonate with them, they don't get it.
That's why I think it's actually a terrible mistake for him to attack Navy SEAL Team 6. Because now a couple of those guys are on TV, and everybody knows how conservative those particular guys are that are on TV, and they're going around here saying Trump shouldn't have said that. That's the kind of thing that could potentially shake some Republicans out of their complacency and go, wait a minute, he didn't go to Nam, did he? And here's the captain of the lead officer in the Navy SEAL Team 6 team telling me this isn't right. So it could be in the first wave of cognitive dissonance, at least.
Yeah, we'll see how this goes. It's really interesting. All right, well, there's other parts of this interview with Chris Wallace that I want to get to. During his one-on-one interview with Donald Trump, Chris Wallace appeared to call the president out. Take a look.
But sir, leaders in authoritarian countries like Russia, China, Venezuela, now repress the media using your words.
I can't talk for other people. I can only talk for me. I will tell you.
But you're seen around the world as a beacon for repression, not for.
I'm not talking about you, but you sometimes maybe, but I'm not talking about you. The news about me is largely phony. It's false. Even sometimes they'll say, sources say, there is no source in many cases. In many cases there is.
I understand you don't like your coverage.
It's amazing how he says two things at once to kind of cover his bases, right? There are no sources. Maybe in some cases there are. Like he'll say two things in the same sentence to kind of give himself cover for the future. It's amazing.
Yeah, and as we've told you before, this is projection because a lot of conservative websites and the ones that Trump relies on do make up things, and they say their source says when there is no source. Now, for anyone in the real press, that's sacrilege and an immediate firing offense and totally intolerable. But in conservative media, oftentimes it's a matter of course. So, and in fact, Donald Trump himself has been his own source, a made-up source. He's been John Barron speaking on behalf of Donald Trump as his spokesperson. When it wasn't John Barron, it was Donald Trump, which is so embarrassing. And he did that earlier in his career, and he would talk about how he's John Barron would call and say, Donald Trump is dating Madonna. And he's dating her very strong, okay? And she loves it, okay? It's going along bigly.
Tremendously.
Yeah.
One quick note on that. If you were wealthy, wouldn't you just hire a publicist to do that for you?
That's right.
Yeah.
But unless you were a guy who went bankrupt 6 times with daddy's money and you're a total loser and then you got to do it on your own.
Makes sense. Now, I like the fact that Wallace, asked him follow-up questions. It was not a softball interview. And he really did hound Trump on his treatment toward the press. There's more to the interview on this very subject. Take a look.
I'm totally in favor of the media. I'm totally in favor of free press. It's got to be fair press. When it's fake.
But the president get to decide what's fair and what's not.
I can tell what's fair and not, and so can my people, and so can a lot of other people.
I understand that, but
when you do something very good and they write it badly, and this is consistently, when you, as an example, rarely do they
Barack
talk
Obama
about.
whined about Fox News all the time, but he never said we were the enemy of the people.
Well, no, he didn't talk about the news. He didn't talk about anything. I'm only saying it very differently than anyone's ever said it before. I'm saying fake news, false reporting, dishonest reporting, of which there is a lot, and I know it. See, I know it because I'm a subject of it. A lot of people don't know it, but when I explain it to them, they understand it. And Chris, you know that better. You don't have to sit here and act like a perfect little, wonderful, innocent angel. I know you too well. I knew your father too well. That's not your gene.
What?
Oh, man.
So
I
there's
know
a
your
lot.
father well. It's not your gene.
Yeah. Chris Wallace, I am your father. Okay, so let me explain a couple of things there because that appeared to be inexplicable. Well, Obama didn't talk about the news. Not true. I'm the only one talking about it in this way. Well, that is partly true. In other words, he had no answer for what Chris Wallace said about Obama. Obama did criticize Fox News, but didn't go and say outlandish things like they are the enemy of the people. Maybe you should target them, right? Mm-hmm. And so even when he lightly criticized them, the rest of the press went nuts in defending Fox News. And so when you talk about that distinction, there's no good answer for Donald Trump. So that's why he stumbles around going, Obama didn't talk about the news. I'm talking about it in a new way that no one else has, right? Okay, so that's that part. And then he's talking about his father, Mike Wallace, who was on 60 Minutes, and he's basically saying to Chris Wallace, I actually know you're a conservative, so you're sitting here, trying to be a little angel and trying to do a fair interview with me, but I actually know you're a conservative, so snap out of it.
Well, I think that it's possible, I know it's rare these days, but it's possible to be a conservative who disagrees with Trump on various issues, including his treatment of the media. When Jim Acosta and CNN were going after the White House following, the White House revoking Acosta's press credential, Fox News actually said that they were in support of CNN in that lawsuit. And it's because there is luckily a united front when it comes to the press, because we all understand the importance of protecting freedom of speech and freedom of the press.
Yeah, and look, it's also possible to be conservative and be a good journalist. It just doesn't happen very often these days. And most of the conservative websites are total trash and propaganda. But Chris Wallace, it does appear to be a conservative and often does fair interviews. And so he might agree with President Trump on some of the policies, but that doesn't mean that he's not going to ask him questions about, hey, doesn't it encourage repressive governments throughout the world when you attack the media and they feel like they've got free reign to attack the media as well? So that's a super fair question, even if you agree with Trump or the Republican Party. And that's what Wallace was doing. And that's why Trump said, I know you're trying to be a little angel here. Okay, but I know what you really think and your father. I don't know why Mike Wallace is a conservative. Maybe he was, I have no idea, but he got thrown under a bus.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a strange, combative interview. And the way that I read into it was that Trump didn't expect follow-up questions. He didn't expect Wallace to ask him anything difficult. He thought it was gonna be a Laura Ingraham, let's play patty cakes type of interview. And so he was kind of caught off guard, and it was pretty awesome to watch it.
Yeah. Look, if it was a president that I really liked and then he started calling people enemy of the people, I'd be all over him, even if I agree with policy positions. In fact, we already did that. We supported Obama in his 2 elections. And then when he started using the Espionage Act against the press, we said that was horrible, abhorrent. He shouldn't have done that. And it opened the door, first of all, it opened the door to something terrible, which was using the espionage against journalists. So in and of itself, it was a terrible policy position. And then it also allowed wannabe dictators like Donald Trump to say, hey, Obama did it, so why can't I crush the press? And so Obama could claim, hey, I only did it in a limited couple of cases. No, you opened the door. So we're honest about that. And then apparently Chris Wallace is honest in his reporting there. And I tell you, in the Trump era, a couple of people have distinguished themselves as conservative, but really honest actors. And some of them surprised me. I'm not talking about Shep Smith. Shep Smith has always been fair, even though he's on Fox News through Obama, Bush, and Trump. No, I'm talking about Judge Napolitano on Fox News and Chris Wallace. There's a couple others, but those 2 in particular have been extraordinarily honest, even if it did not suit their political purposes.
Exactly. We have to take one more break in this hour, but when we come back, some drams on Matthew Whitaker. What does Lindsey Graham think about him? That and more when we return.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. Lots of great comments as usual. Let's go to Eduardo in the members section saying, how can people listen and follow someone that never makes any sense on everything he says? How? At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today. And well, one of you guys explained it on Twitter, actually. Art Murray once said, I think Trump has developed a new way of speaking that allows people to take whatever meaning they like from his statements. I call it a word cloud. The example Anna gave of Trump saying 2 things in one statement is what I'm talking about. That's right. By the way, Obama would do this, but in a far more sophisticated way. He would say, hey, we really love the spirit of the protesters in Egypt, and they're fighting for democracy, and it's wonderful, and we cherish our allies like Mubarak. And at the end, you had to go, wait, those people are against each other, but you just praised them both, right? But you kind of forgot, as he so eloquently phrased both, it made you seem like they were both on the side of democracy, right? Yeah. Trump does something similar, but the exact opposite in style. No grace, no subtlety, no nothing. He just says both things at once. That's why the troops were too late in getting bin Laden are the worst. That's why I love the troops and they're the best.
Yeah, totally.
What?
It's kind of amazing though how you don't have to be a savvy communicator to be a genius in marketing. Because he's horrible at communicating, but he's very effective at marketing.
Just pound the message home.
Yeah.
That's it. Anyway, Lord Mahakala writes in the member section, the conspiracy nut in me thinks that Trump is laying the groundwork for a fake military coup attempt like Erdogan in Turkey so he can start jailing his enemies. Probably a bit too much, yeah. Would he? If he thought he could get away with it and he had amassed enough power, I think he would do it in a second, wouldn't even blink. He'd be like, wait, is it to my advantage or not to my advantage? Oh, I get to stay president forever instead of going to prison for all my crooked business dealings. He'd do that like this. But he's nowhere near that right now because even that would definitely be a bridge too far, even for Republicans, way too far. And last one is from Twitter. Amy John wrote in, I bet those Navy SEALs took so long to catch bin Laden because of bone spurs. Excellent one, Amy John. We appreciate it. By the way, Bernie's doing a town hall. Just announced it on December 3rd. One of the media partners that will cover it is, of course, us. So on December 3rd, make sure that you catch Bernie Sanders' town hall on climate change. So get the regular show here and then Bernie Sanders' town hall back to back. TYT.com/live, and you'll definitely catch that. All right, Anna, what's next?
All right. Senate Democrats have been abundantly clear in their disapproval of naming Matthew Whitaker as the acting attorney general. Now, the argument is that he should have been confirmed by the Senate. And interestingly enough, there are some Republicans who seem to agree. Take a look.
He said some things that would probably be problematic to be confirmed. But having said that, I was very impressed with his attitude, his professionalism, and he's got a very solid resume. So I would encourage the president to pick somebody fairly soon so we can have a permanent attorney general going into the first part of next year.
Does that mean not Mr. Whitaker when you say you'd like him to nominate someone very soon?
No, I mean, that's up to the president. You asked me about Mr. Whitaker. I have nothing against him.
So Lindsey Graham says that, hey, Whitaker has said some things in the past that are problematic for a Senate confirmation. Of course, he didn't specify what he meant by that statement, but we all know what he meant. He's said things about the special counsel's investigation into Russian meddling and how he thinks that it's a witch hunt, essentially regurgitating what Trump says. And Whitaker was also involved in an incredibly shady business that that underwent a civil suit and lost. And now the FBI is investigating that company for possible criminal charges. So Whitaker, again, was part of that company. So there are problematic components to him being the acting attorney general. And I'm glad that Lindsey Graham at least mentioned that in this interview.
Yeah, TYT Investigates did a great story on that company that Whitaker was an advisory board member to. So look, I don't know if the Republicans are ever actually going to challenge Donald Trump.
Nope.
So if Trump said, oh yeah, that's it, I'm nominating Whitaker right now. What are you gonna do about it, Lindsey Graham? My guess is he would bow his head and say, oh yes, sir, of course, sir, Whitaker, sir. And I mean, look, they put in Kavanaugh with worse charges, so Whitaker probably fly through. But for the moment being, this is their subtle way of trying to nudge him towards a more acceptable candidate. Does it look like Donald Trump responds well to subtlety? So that ain't gonna work.
I don't think it's about nudging. I think it's about playing both sides. I think it's about supporting Trump while simultaneously protecting themselves and their futures should Trump fall out of grace with his supporters.
Yeah, no, great point.
Yeah, it's
like if it turns out Mueller got him, Lindsey Graham could go back and say, hey, look, I said I had concerns about Whitaker, and Whitaker shouldn't have fired him. If Mueller, for example, if Whitaker fires Mueller and Mueller then releases damning evidence on Trump, Graham can point back to this interview. But if push comes to shove, will he vote for Whitaker? Of course he will, because he'll do whatever Donald Trump tells him to do.
Now, it appears that everyone has acknowledged the fact that Matthew Whitaker has said negative things toward the Russia investigation. He has called it a witch hunt. And during Trump's interview with Chris Wallace over the weekend, Trump claimed that he had no idea.
He has a long record of speaking out against the special counsel and his probe.
I could see a scenario where Jeff Sessions is replaced with a recess appointment, and that Attorney General doesn't fire Bob Mueller, but he just reduces the budget so low that his investigation grinds to almost a halt.
The truth is, there was no collusion with the Russians in the Trump campaign.
Did you know before you appointed him that he had that record and was so critical of Robert Mueller?
I did not know that. I did not know he took views on the Mueller investigation as such.
And when you found that out?
I don't think it had any effect. If you look at those statements they really can be viewed either way, but I don't think it would have any effect.
He says there's no collusion.
Chris, I'll tell you what.
He says you can starve the investigation.
What do you do when a person's right? There is no collusion. He happened to be right. I mean, he said it. So if he said there is collusion, I'm supposed to be taking somebody that says there is, because then I wouldn't take him for two reasons. But the number one reason is the fact that he would have been wrong. If he said that there's no collusion, he's right.
Okay, if he said it. I didn't know that. Oh, come on. I mean, if you're a MAGA guy, I guess your only defense is, Oh, we know he's lying, but he's trolling you liberals to try to trigger you.
That is definitely something that I've seen a lot of on social media.
Yeah, because they have no defense left. It's such an obvious lie. Oh, Donald Trump didn't happen to know that Whitaker had been saying all over television that he's against Mueller. And if there happened to be a recess appointment of someone to be attorney general, they should make sure to end the Mueller investigation. And golly gee, turns out that he's the one, after Sessions is dumped, just like he said on television, is the guy picked to be the interim attorney general who would start the investigation and end it. Of course Donald Trump knew. You think he didn't look into that? You think that he went into his chief of staff or whatever, he's like, no, look guys, I just want you to pick someone who's independent. Make sure this thing's on the up and up. Don't worry about what they think about the Mueller investigation. There's not even a single MAGA guy who thinks that. You're brain dead if you think that.
So I have evidence. Remember, Donald Trump and Jeff Sessions did not have a good relationship because Jeff Sessions recused himself. Matthew Whitaker was the chief of staff for Jeff Sessions when he was attorney general. And Donald Trump refused to speak directly to Jeff Sessions because he's a baby and would only speak to Whitaker. So he's had multiple conversations with Whitaker and knows what Whitaker's stance is on the Russia investigation. He's a liar.
He comically said after naming him that he didn't know who Matt Whitaker was. Trump was on TV before the appointment saying, I know Matt Whitaker, he's a good guy. Like, it is literally impossible for you to believe that Donald Trump is not lying. So if you do, there's like, your brain doesn't work right. I'm serious, you should go see a doctor. Because he lies to you right in front of your face, patently obvious. So you go, oh, no, that looks right to me. You got issues, dude, go see a specialist.
Hope you have good insurance though. All right, moving on. Democrats have been highly critical of Donald Trump naming Matthew Whitaker as the acting attorney general. One of those Democrats is Adam Schiff. And over the weekend, Trump went after Schiff by intentionally misspelling his last name so it would be a synonym for crap. In the tweet, he says, so funny to see little Adam talking about the fact that acting attorney general Matt Whitaker was not approved by the Senate, but not mentioning the fact that Bob Mueller, who is highly conflicted, was not approved by the Senate. So real quick, before we get into the intentional misspelling, I just wanna make sure everyone knows, and you guys are smart, so I'm sure you already do, that special counsel Mueller did not have to be confirmed by the Senate. And the president should know that, which is why my tweet response to Trump was, why are you so dumb?
That's it, just that simple. That's okay, so this is the second time that the president has said something that you literally are not allowed to say on television, and that's why we can't say it, we're also on TV. This is the same guy that a day before that was making the argument that Acosta better watch himself, and CNN and all the reporters in the White House better watch themselves because we have to have decorum in the White House. And then he turns around and goes, oh yeah, get it, not Schiff, but the thing with crap. God, you're such a pathetic little kid. You're not a normal little kid, you're a pathetic little kid who has like demons. And if you were actually a little kid, I'd want to help you and I'd get you a ton of counseling, but you're a 72-year-old grown-ass man to make poop jokes when you're president. And he didn't do it off the cuff. Like if he did it off the cuff, you go, oh God, he's being a populist and he's a knucklehead and et cetera. He wrote it down on Twitter. He wrote it down. That's why when he said a couple of times, I'm really like a smart person. You go, agree to disagree, even on the phrasing of that. But once he wrote it on Twitter, he wrote, I'm, like, a smart person.
Yeah, amazing, amazing.
What? I'm like a smart person, you write that down. So the conversation about decorum is over. Okay, anyone who entertains that as if it's a real point is you're doing false equivalency, you're not doing your job, you should immediately point out what kind of a hypocrite he is. Second of all, this is our president, a runaway child.
Yeah, there's a growing number of parents, and I love these parenting boards that I've randomly started reading. A number of parents who are genuinely concerned about raising their kids in this era, because some of them have heard their kids regurgitating what they've heard Trump say. And so they have to like sit their kids down and say, no, honey, please don't say things that the president says. And a lot of these people are actually conservatives. Anyway, this is all anecdotal evidence, right? It's just forums online. But I just found it fascinating because the president was someone that people would look up to. The president was someone that parents would try to encourage their kids to be like. And now, I mean, decorum was thrown out the window as soon as we heard about Trump grabbing women by the pussy. So there's that.
And so for him to now turn around and say, okay, do the childish thing in the beginning, and then come back around to going, well, how come Mueller wasn't appointed? And just do 1 minute of homework. But again, it's not the first time. If it was the first time and then aides pulled him aside and they're like, Mr. President, this is really embarrassing. We hate to break it to you, but special counsel does not have to be confirmed by the Senate, right? But no one ever does that because he's a man-child and he would fire them. He'd get angry, his feelings would get hurt. He has really thin skin. So no one dares correct the president. So this is actually now, I think, is about his third time at least that I have seen him make the point about, oh yeah, how come the special counsel wasn't confirmed? But you're complaining about Whitaker because it's a different position, you idiot. And all you had to do was ask one of the thousands of people who work for you. But you're too stupid to know what you don't know. And so you think, I got him. How come we didn't confirm the janitor?
Okay. All right, so what does Adam Schiff have to say about all of this? He talked about it a little bit during a recent interview. Take a look.
I think the appointment is unconstitutional. He's clearly a principal officer, and the fact that he is a temporary principal officer doesn't mean that that is any less subject to Senate confirmation. Constitutionally, it has to be subject to confirmation. It's a flawed appointment, but the biggest flaw, from my point of view, is that he was chosen for the purpose of interfering with the Mueller investigation.
This is the reason why Trump dislikes him.
Yeah, well, he probably couldn't even understand him. He's like, that's complete sentences I don't understand. Okay, so yes, look, the bottom line is the Attorney General is in the succession line for president. I believe he's 6th in line if something goes terribly wrong. You can't have someone that not confirmed by the Senate, even as an acting Attorney General. It has to be someone confirmed by the Senate. It's clearly unconstitutional, but this is like the 18th time that Donald Trump has done something clearly unconstitutional because he doesn't care about the Constitution, he doesn't care about democracy. All he cares about is Donald Trump. This meathead Whitaker says he's gonna end the Mueller investigation. He's my guy. I don't have anyone else confirmed by the Senate who would end it in exactly the way that I want. Oh, Whitaker's a hatchet man for Republicans? Perfect, Whitaker it is. But sir, that's unconstitutional. Oh yeah? I'll tell the people who call it unconstitutional, I'll call them poop. That'll show them. That's who our president is. Of course it's embarrassing for all parents and all Americans, anyone that's paying attention.
Exactly. We got to take a break. When we come back, more news for you, including a devastating bill out of the state of Ohio, and also whether or not Trump is willing to listen to the audio of Khashoggi's murder.
But that's really telling too, okay? By the way, guys, share and like the stream if you like the show. It helps spread the word. It's really easy to do. All right, we'll come right back. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.